It is Monday, which means it is Mythology Monday, and we are reading Virgil's Aeneid, and it's getting good because now we're in book 4, which is called, again, in modern books they'll give like little headings for the different titles or the different books, different chapters. Not original, modern day inventions, but this one is called The Passion of the Queen. So, briefly to sum up, if you're just joining us, or if you don't remember, if you haven't been taking notes, which is fine, Aeneas has... Hello, Emily, good morning! Aeneas has left Troy after the Trojan War, has sailed, and at the very beginning we just find that he comes ashore at Carthage, and he meets Queen Dido, and she's interested. He's a mighty warrior. He's got noble people with him. But Venus steps in and makes her even more interested. Aeneas comes and tells his tale. The last couple books were Aeneas describing the end of the Trojan War, how horrible it was, and then his wanderings, how he traveled all around, all his adventures and misadventures getting to Carthage. And now, as we've started in book 4, things aren't going super well, depending on how you look at it. Dido has fallen in love with Aeneas. She talks to her sister. She's like, I don't know if this is right. I was honoring my dead husband. I wasn't going to look for any more, romance. And the sister's like, no, he's hot. You should do that. And she's like, well, I don't know. And then we find out, again, very crucially for a Roman audience, the last little section we read last week, towers half built rose no further. Men no longer trained in arms or toiled to make harbors and battlements impregnable. Projects were broken off, laid over, and the menacing huge walls with cranes unmoving stood against the sky. So it's so bad, the rot starts at the top, at the head. Dido is afflicted, and the whole town is suffering, and they're not productive anymore. Which, again, to Romans, it's like, oh, it's the worst possible thing. People aren't being productive members of their society. Say it ain't so. And we continue. As soon as Jove's dear consort saw the lady prey to such illness, and her reputation standing no longer in the way of passion, Saturn's daughter said to Venus, so again, this is Juno, wondrous, covered yourself with glory, have you not, you and your boy, and won such prizes too. Divine power is something to remember, if by collusion of two gods one mortal woman is brought low. I am not blind. Your fear of our new walls has not escaped me. Fear and mistrust of Carthage at her height. But how far will it go? What do you hope for, being so contentious? Why do we not arrange eternal peace and formal marriage? You have your heart's desire, Dido in love, Dido consumed with passion to her core. Why not then rule this people side by side with equal authority? And let the queen wait on her Phrygian lord. Let her consign into your hand her Tyrians as a dowry. Now Venus knew this talk was all pretense, all to divert the future power from Italy to Libya. So, the behind the scenes, what's happening here is, because of Venus wants Aeneas to succeed, to complete his journeys, to get to Italy, to found Rome, right? Juno sees this as, oh, if I can waylay Aeneas, then we can stop those future things from happening. So, hey, let's have Aeneas actually get married to Dido. Let's make it official. They can rule together, and everybody will be happy here in Carthage. But Venus sees through her plots, and she answered, who would be so mad, so foolish as to shun that prospect of or prefer war with you? That is, provided fortune is on the side of your proposal. The fates here are perplexing. Would one city satisfy Jupiter's will for Tyrians and Trojan exiles? Does he approve a union and a mingling of these races? You are his consort. You have every right to sound him out. Go on, and I'll come too. So she's like, well, this is weird that you're proposing this, but I don't know, maybe. Let's go see what the big guy has to say. That's fine with you, right? But regal Juno pointedly replied, that task will rest with me. Just now, as to the need of the moment and the way to meet it, listen, and I'll explain in a few words. She's like, no, we don't need to go. We don't need to go ask Jupiter about it. Aeneas and Dido, in her misery, plan hunting in the forest, when the Titan sun comes up with rays to light the world. While beaters and excitement ring the glens, my gift will be a black rain cloud, and hail, a downpour, and I'll shake heaven with thunder. The company will scatter, lost in gloom, as Dido and the Trojan captain come to one same cavern. I shall be on hand, and if I can be certain you are willing, there I shall marry them, and call her his. A wedding this will be. Then Cytherea, that's Venus, not disinclined, nodded to Juno's plea, and smiled at the stratagem now given away. Alright, so we've got two goddesses trying to manipulate behind the scenes what's happening, and sort of an agreement that the royal party is going to go hunting, and Juno is going to arrange it that a little rain is going to come in, and the lovers will retreat into a cave, and there they will get married. But everyone is plotting. Dawn came up, meanwhile, from the ocean stream, and in the early sunshine from the gates picked huntsmen issued. Wide-meshed nets and snares, broad spearheads for big game, Massilian horsemen trooping with hounds and packs keen on the scent. But Dido lingered in her hall, as Punic nobles waited, and her mettlesome hunter stood nearby, cavorting in gold and scarlet, champing his foam-flecked bridle. At long last the queen appeared with courtiers in a crowd, a short Sidonian cloak edged in embroidery caught about her, at her back a quiver sheathed in gold, her hair tied up in gold, in a brooch of gold pinning her scarlet dress. Phrygians came in her company as well, and Iülus, joyous at the scene. Resplendent above the rest, Aeneas walked to meet her, to join his retinue with hers. Again, like a marriage. So we're going to see a lot of little hints and references to marriage, right? So the queen comes out, she's all bedecked and beautiful, her hair is up, her entourage starts moving, Aeneas comes out, his entourage joins with hers, and so on and so forth. He seemed, think of the Lord Apollo in the spring, when he leaves wintering in Lycia by Xanthus' torrent, for his mother's isle of Delos to renew the festival. Around his altars Cretans, Dryopes, and painted Agathursans raise a shout. But the god walks the Cynthian ridge alone, and smooths his hair, binds it in a fronded laurel, braids it in gold, and shafts rings on his shoulders. So elated and swift Aeneas walked with sunlit grace upon him. Soon the hunters riding in company to high pathless hills, blah, 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 blah. So essentially they go hunting. Everybody all together. Meanwhile in heaven began a rolling thunder, and soon the storm broke, pouring rain and hail. Then Tyrians and Trojans in alarm, with Venus's Dardan grandson, ran for cover here and there in the wilderness, as freshets coursed from the high hills. So now we come to it. So Juno has sent this storm. And what is going to happen? Now, to the self-same cave came Dido and the captain of the Trojans. Primal Earth herself and nuptial Juno opened the ritual. Torches of lightning blazed. High heaven became witness to the marriage, and nymphs cried out wild hymns from a mountaintop. That day was the first cause of death, and first of sorrow. Dido had no further qualms as to impressions given and set abroad. She thought no longer of a secret love, but called it marriage. Thus, under that name, she hid her fault. Now, in no time at all, through all the African cities, rumor goes, nimble as quicksilver among evils. Rumor thrives on motion, stronger for the running, lowly at first through fear, then rearing high, she treads the lands and hides her head in cloud. As people fable it, the earth, her mother, furious against the gods, bore a late sister to the giants Coeus and Enceladus, giving her speed on foot and on the wing. Monstrous, deformed, titanic, pinioned, with an eye beneath for every body feather, and, strange to say, as many tongues and buzzing mouths as eyes, as many pricked up ears. By night she flies between the earth and heaven, shrieking through darkness, and she never turns her eyelids down to sleep. By day she broods, on the alert, on rooftops or on towers, bringing great cities fear, harping on lies and slander, ever-handedly with truth. In those days rumor took an evil joy at filling countrysides with whispers, gossips of what was done and never done. How this Aeneas landed Trojan-born, how Dido in her beauty graced his company, then how they reveled all the winter long, unmindful of the realm, prisoners of lust. Sounds awesome. Yeah. So what's going on here? There's a long tradition in stories, in ancient stories, ancient times, of love-related things happening in caves. It's a thing. Whether it's stories of couples running off for romantic interludes in caves, to a long history of marriage rites being performed in caves. You're going to get married, you go into a cave, there's a whole thing with a procession that goes into a cave, there are torches, there's sacrifices, all this kind of stuff. Sometimes we read about like literal beds being moved into caves for marriages and consummations of marriages. Caves are nice, sure. I mean, caves are wonderful. So that's what's happening here. So essentially, again, there's this storm. Aeneas and Dido find a cave. It just so happens to be there because the gods are conspiring with/against them. And as sometimes happens between couples, things happen in the cave, and if you don't discuss with your partner exactly what's going on, there could be differences of opinion. So from Aeneas' perspective, which we don't actually hear just yet, they had a fun time in a cave. And that's about all there is. From Dido's perspective, they're now married. They went and had sex in a cave. There were sort of signs from nature and from the gods that this was an official ceremony, right? Lightning blazed as the torches. It seemed to her to be more of a formal situation than necessarily Aeneas thought it was. Now, is anybody at fault here? I would say at this point, no, other than the gods, because they're screwing with everybody. But so far we've got some hot cave action, and then we jump forward a little bit. How they reveled all the winter long, unmindful of the realm, prisoners of lust. So they're having a fun winter, hanging out, and nothing is really getting done in the meantime. And they're not caring about being rulers; they're just having fun. Yes, everlasting miscommunication about commitment. Exactly. And we had this really interesting look at Rumor as a goddess, right? Rumor is this weird creature. She flies. She's super fast. She lives in towers and high points in cities, but she also can fly up into the sky. She's got a whole bunch of eyes that never close, and she broods. She's always on alert for things. And then she fills the countryside with her tales, her whispers of things going on. These tales the scabrous goddess put about on men's lips everywhere. Her twisting course took her to King Iarbas, whom she set ablaze with anger piled on top of anger. Son of Jupiter Hammon by a nymph, a ravished Garamantian, this prince had built the god 100 great shrines, 100 altars, each with holy fires alight by night and day, sentries on watch, the ground enriched by victims' blood, the doors festooned with flowering wreaths. Before his altars, King Iarbas, crazed by the raw story, stood, they say, among the presences, with supplicating hands, pouring out prayer. All-powerful Jove, to whom the feasting Moors at ease on colored couches tip their wine, do you see this? Are we then fools to fear you throwing down your bolts? Those dazzling fires of lightning, are they aimless in the clouds? And rumbling thunder meaningless? This woman who turned up in our country and laid down a tiny city at a price, to whom I gave a beach to plow, and on my terms, after refusing to marry me, has taken Aeneas to be master in her realm. And now Sir Paris, with his men, half men, his chin and perfumed hair tied up in a Maeonian bonnet, takes possession. As for ourselves, here we are bringing gifts into these shrines, supposedly your shrines, hugging that empty fable. So if you remember before, Dido was married. Her brother was crazy, killed her husband. She ran away. She took a bunch of wealth with her, and she essentially bought a small parcel of land to be Carthage here in Libya in North Africa. But she's surrounded by all these other kingdoms and all these other kings who are not super cool, and a lot of them were trying to marry her and take over her land. And one of them is this King Iarbas. And now all of a sudden they hear, what? Some Trojan just shows up and you marry him? You're going to let him be king? Now again, that's not exactly the deal anyway, but they're jealous. They're mad. And so this one's like, what's up, Jupiter? I've been praying to you all this time. Make all these sacrifices all the time. And then the thing that I've been asking for, that I deserve, just goes to somebody else? What kind of crap is that? Pleas like this from the man clinging to his altars reached the ears of the Almighty. Now he turned his eyes upon the queen's town and the lovers, careless of their good name, then spoke to Mercury, assigning him a mission. So the gods do listen occasionally. Definitely, the more you build temples, the more you pray, the more likely the god is to actually listen to you. But it's not guaranteed. But in this case, Jupiter does hear, and he sends Mercury on a mission. Sun, bestir yourself. Call up the zephyrs, take to your wings and glide. Approach the Dardan captain where he tarries, wrapped in Tyrian Carthage, losing sight of future towns the fates ordain. Correct him. Carry my speech to him on the running winds. No son like this did his enchanting mother promise to us, nor such did she deliver twice from peril at the hands of Greeks. He was to be ruler of Italy, potential empire, armorer of war, to father men from Teucer's noble blood, and bring the whole world under law's dominion. If glories to be won by deeds like these cannot arouse him, if he will not strive for his own honor, does he begrudge his son, Ascanius, the high strongholds of Rome? What has he in mind? What hope? To make him stay amid a hostile race and lose from view Ausonian progeny, Lavinian lands? The man should sail. That is the whole point. Let this be what you tell him, as from me. So that is an important speech. Jupiter is saying to Mercury, his son, go talk to this Aeneas fellow. Remind him we've got a whole plan set out for him. He's supposed to sail. He's supposed to get to Italy, found a new town that's going to become a city, that's going to be an empire, that's going to rule the world. What the hell is he doing? Light a fire under him and get him going. Now, this again ties into... We have to remember that essentially, in a lot of ways, this book, this epic poem written by Virgil, is it's Roman propaganda. So here Jupiter's saying, we have all of these fates. It's prophesied that you are going to found a mighty empire that's going to be the greatest in the world. Because, of course, Virgil is writing this for Romans to read about how they are part of the mightiest empire in the world and ever. So, and they're reading this and they're like, yeah, come on, Aeneas, come and do it. He finished and fell silent. Mercury made ready to obey the great command of his great father, and he first tied on the golden sandals, winged, that high in air transport him over seas or over land, abreast of gale winds. Then he took the wand with which he summons pale souls out of Orcus, and ushers others to the undergloom, lulls men to slumber or awakens them, and open dead men's eyes. Now, one thing that not everybody realizes when we talk about Mercury, or Hermes, the Greek version, is that what do you think of when you hear Hermes or Mercury? What do you envision? What is Hermes or Mercury? What is he the god of? What is he in charge of? What's his job? Traditionally, there are several right answers. And he's a god. He can do whatever he wants. So traditionally, the number one answer, knowledge. Interesting. Good. That's definitely part of it. Traditionally, when people talk about, like, if they're making a list of gods or they're teaching stuff or they're summarizing, Hermes is the messenger god. That's like the thing he gets saddled with, right? He's there to go and give and take and send messages, just like we see here, right? Jupiter wants to impart a message to Aeneas. He calls up Mercury. Go and do this. But that's just part of it. Messages are really important, especially in ancient times when they didn't have mail and email and everything else. And so, yes, so Builderus, you're exactly right. So Hermes becomes, by extension, becomes a god of knowledge because he knows things that other people don't. He's taking information and knowledge from one party to another. That also turns into him being a god of secret knowledge. So there are secret rites that are performed and sort of entrusted to Hermes and to Mercury. Because he does all of this stuff, he's also a god of travel, right? Because he has to be able to get to and from the gods and anybody who he's giving messages to. He then becomes a god of access because he needs to be able to get anywhere he needs to go. And by extension, he becomes... so it sort of spiderwebs out. So he's also a god of getting in and out of places and secret places, which by extension he becomes a god of thieves. So thieves worship and pray to Hermes to be able to perform what they do. Separate from all that, as a god of somebody who moves between places, Hermes and Mercury are what are called liminal, which is a fun term, which Twitch doesn't think is a real word, but that's fine. So someone who is liminal is someone who goes on either side of something, crosses a border, right? What fresh hell? Welcome, Zardoz. We're talking about Hermes or Mercury, the liminal god. So as a liminal god, Hermes crosses over borders, crosses over boundaries, can't keep him in check. And so one of his other jobs is he is an escort for souls going down to the underworld. That's one of his duties. we don't see that in a lot of stories. There's some important stories where he does that, but yeah. So here they talk a little bit about that, and yes, Hermes. He's got a few magic items in his collection, notably his winged sandals that he can fly all over the world, and above and through. But he also traditionally he has a magic wand, and this wand appears in the Odyssey when Hermes visits Odysseus, and it appears here again. He picks up his magic wand, which is pretty cool. And just like other gods, Hermes and Mercury have a bunch of epithets that go along with him that we see at times. He's fleet-footed. He's winged. There are other versions. He's Trismegistus. He has thrice knowledged and all this other stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff with Hermes and Mercury. A lot of, like, again, if you just had a list of, okay, Hermes is the god of messengers, thieves, and souls in the dead, you'd be like, that seems random, but it's actually all tied together. All right, so he gets his sandals, he gets his wand, and he flies. I'm gonna skip ahead here. He just sort of flies around. So he gets to the sandbars of Libya. Alighting tiptoe on the first hutments, there he found Aeneas. And what is Aeneas doing when Mercury finds him? Aeneas is laying foundations for new towers and homes. And says Mercury, he noted well the sword hilt the man wore, adorned with yellow jasper, and the cloak aglow with Tyrian dye upon his shoulders, gifts of the wealthy queen, who had inwoven gold threads in the fabric. Mercury took him to task at once. Is it for you to lay the stones for Carthage's high walls, tame husband that you are, to build their city, oblivious of your own world, your own kingdom? From bright Olympus, he that rules the gods and turns the earth and heaven by his power, he and no other sent me to you, told me to bring this message on the running winds. What have you in mind? What hope wasting your days in Libya? If future history's glories do not affect you, if you will not strive for your own honor, think of Ascanius. Think of the expectations of your heir, Iulus, to whom the Italian realm, the land of Rome, are due. Now, this is a powerful thing for someone to say to, again, as far as the audience, someone to say to a Roman. Now, several things going on. First of all, welcome, new people coming in. First of all, the first time Mercury sees Aeneas, Aeneas is building foundations. And again, Romans are like, oh, tell me more. He's working. He's a productive member of society. He's building foundations for new towers, new homes. That's great. But Mercury looks closer, and he sees that Aeneas he's got a sword belt strapped on and a cape. Looks closer and he sees, these are actually decorated with Carthaginian designs. So these are gifts from Queen Dido. Now, again, in historical times, Carthage and Rome were rivals, and they ended up having two horrifically brutal wars that end with, or in the process, tons of people are killed on both sides. Carthaginians come up into Italy and attack, and it's brutal. Eventually, the Romans will win and destroy Carthage completely. But as we're reading, you sort of have to think about how a Roman would be hearing this story, because they have all of that rolling around in the back of their heads. Now, again, the wars with Carthage are already in the past for Virgil, but still, it was a big deal. So Mercury pointing out, this Aeneas fellow, he's doing noble things, but he's doing it for Carthaginians. When when you have prophesied for your future, setting up Rome, this is not really the right thing for you to be doing. And then too, he says, and even if you're ignoring your own glories, which is crazy, think of your son and his future. And again, they are very fast and loose with the names of his son. Aeneas' son is Ascanius and also Iulus. And even like within 2 sentences, they'll switch back and forth between them. Sorry about that. So yeah, won't someone think of the children? Think of your son, who also has this magnificent destiny that you're ignoring by staying here in Carthage with your wife? And Mercury, as he spoke, departed from the visual field of mortals to a great distance, ebbed in subtle air, amazed and shocked to the bottom of his soul by what his eyes had seen. So Mercury drops down. He's got a paragraph worth of speech, and then he flies off. But he's shocked. Shocked, I tell you. Shocked at what he saw. Aeneas felt his hackles rise, his voice choke in his throat. At the sharp admonition and command from heaven had shaken him awake. He now burned only to be gone, to leave that land of the sweet life behind. What can he do? How tell the impassioned queen and hope to win her over? What opening shall he choose? This way and that he let his mind dart, testing alternatives, running through every one. And as he pondered, this seemed the better tactic. He called in Menestheus, Sergestus, and stalwart Serestus, telling them, get the fleet ready for sea, but quietly, and collect men on shore. Lay in ship stores and gear. As to the cause for a change of plan, they were to keep it secret. Seeing the excellent Dido had no notion, no warning, that such love could be cut short. He would himself look for the right occasion, the easiest time to speak, the way to do it. The Trojans, to a man, gladly obeyed. So there's a lot going on in a very short amount of time here. And this section is debated wildly. Okay? Because essentially what happens is Aeneas immediately jumps up and says, okay, we're out of here. Let me think about how to do this. I'm going to hold off on telling Dido. I'm going to tell my men to get ready, put all their stuff in the ships, get ready to sail off in secret. Now, do you see this as Aeneas abandoning a woman who loves him, who he's made plans with? Do you see this as Aeneas being forced by the gods to leave? Do you see this as an excuse for Aeneas to get back on the road and to go on his own travels that he really wanted to? You can take this in different ways. Aeneas sees this as a command. It says, as the sharp admonition and command from heaven. And then a couple lines later, what can he do? So he certainly sees this as a divine mandate that he has to leave. Now it is also interesting to note that his men are glad to get going. They don't want to stay there. The queen, for her part, felt some plot afoot quite soon, for who deceives a woman in love? She caught wind of a change, being in fear of what had seemed her safety. Evil rumor, shameless as before, brought word to her in her distracted state of ships being rigged in trim for sailing. Furious, at her wits' end, she traversed the whole city, all aflame with rage, like a bacchante driven wild by emblems shaken, when the mountain revels of the odd year possess her, when the cry of Bacchus rises and Cithaeron calls all through the shouting night. Thus it turned out she was the first to speak and charge Aeneas. So Dido hears rumors. Something's up. The men are assembling. They're getting their ships ready. Clearly, they're about to leave. She's raging through her town. She finds Aeneas. You even hoped to keep me in the dark as to this outrage, did you, two-faced man, and slip away in silence? Can our love not hold you? Can the pledge we gave not hold you? Can Dido not, now sure to die in pain? Even in winter weather must you... Even in winter weather must you toil with ships and fret to launch against high winds for the open sea? Oh, heartless! Tell me now, if you were not in search of alien lands and new strange homes, if ancient Troy remained, would ships put out for Troy on these big seas? Somebody is very upset at Dido. Dido's reaction here. Do you go to get away from me? I beg you, by these tears, by your own right hand, since I have left my wretched self nothing but that. Yes, by the marriage that we entered on, if ever I did well and you were grateful, or found some sweetness in a gift from me, have pity now on a declining house. Put this plan by, I beg you, if a prayer is not yet out of place. Because of you, Libyans and nomad kings detest me. My own Tyrians are hostile. Because of you, I lost my integrity, and that admired name by which alone I made my way once toward the stars. To whom do you abandon me, a dying woman, guest that you are, the only name now left from that of husband? Why do I live on? Shall I, until my brother Pygmalion comes to pull my walls down, or the Gaetulan Iarbas leads me captive? If at least there were a child by you for me to care for, a little one to play in my courtyard, and give me back Aeneas. In spite of it all, I should not feel so utterly defeated, utterly bereft. So this is what's referred to as Dido's rage. Okay, she goes on this 3-paragraph rant to Aeneas. And she's pissed, and rightfully so. There's no interpretation that looks at this and says that Dido has no reason to be mad, right? One way or another, she's getting screwed over. Whether you say it's Aeneas who's screwing her over, or whether you say the gods are screwing her over, one way or the other, Dido is 100% a victim here. Well, at least mostly victim. It's up to the interpretation of whether she assumed their marriage was more official than it was, but other than that, yes, this is awful for Dido. She says, what about our love? She said, it's ridiculous that you're trying to run away in like the worst weather to sail on the seas. That even if Troy was fine, you wouldn't rush out of here like this right now at this weather. You'd wait and go when the seas were calmer. And then talks about how, because I hooked up with you, all the other kingdoms around here are pissed. All these other kings like Iarbas are furious and they're going to come attack. And then that really sad ending part about how, like, if only we had a kid, at least I could look at the kid and have some sense of happiness. But no, you're leaving me even without a child. She ended there. The man, by Jove's command, held fast his eyes and fought down the emotion in his heart. So Aeneas, he feels He's sad. He doesn't want to go. But by Jove's command, at length he answered, "As for myself, be sure I never shall deny all you can say, your majesty, of what you meant to me. Never will the memory of Alyssa stale for me, while I can still remember my own life, and the spirit rules my body. As to the event, a few words. Do not think I meant to be deceitful and slip away. I never held the torches of a bridegroom, never entered upon the pact of marriage." We didn't get married, yo. We just had fun in a cave. I didn't get married. "If fate permitted me to spend my days by my own lights and make the best of things according to my wishes, first of all, I should look after Troy and the loved relics left of my people. Priam's great hall should stand again. I should have restored the Tower of Pergamum for Trojans in defeat. But now it is the rich Italian land Apollo tells me I must make for. Italy, named by his oracles. There is my love. There is my country. If, as a Phoenician, you are so given to the charms of Carthage, Libyan city that it is, then tell me, why begrudge the Teucrians new lands for homesteads in Ausonia? Are we not entitled to look for realms abroad? Night never veils the earth in damp and darkness. Fiery stars never ascend the east. But in my dreams, my father's troubled ghost admonishes and frightens me. Then, too, each night, thoughts come of young Ascanius, my dear boy, wronged, defrauded of his kingdom, Hesperian lands of destiny. And now the god's interpreter, sent by Jove himself, I swear it by your head and mine, has brought commands down through the racing winds. I say with my own eyes, in full daylight, I saw him enter the building. With my very ears I drank his message in. So please, no more of these appeals that set us both afire. I sail for Italy, not of my own free will." Exactly, Sardas. I didn't see anybody pronounce us man and wife. Now again, you can interpret this. You can look at this and say you agree with what Aeneas is saying. You could agree with what Dido's saying. You could say they both have valid points. I feel like they both have valid points. I don't think one is completely right and the other is completely wrong. Welcome, Tiny Chris. But it is a bad scene. And again, he mentions that, he's like, look, you fled a crazy situation and you ended up here getting your own new lands. Would you begrudge that for my people? We had to leave Troy. We should get our own lands. And welcome, Eridans. So it's like, we're not so different. We're just trying to find new lands for our people. And also, we totally didn't get married. There's no ring on this finger. As I take off the ring that's on my finger. During all this, she had been watching him with face averted, looking him up and down in silence. And she burst out raging now. "No goddess was your mother. Dardanus was not the founder of your family. Liar and cheat? Some rough Caucasian cliff begot you on flint. Hyrcanian tigresses tendered their teats to you. Why should I palter? Why still hold back for more indignity? Sigh, did he, while I wept? Or look at me? Or yield a tear? Or pity her who loved him? What shall I say first, with so much to say? The time is past when either Supreme Juno or the Saturnian Father viewed these things with justice. Faith can never be secure. I took the man in, thrown up on this coast in dire need, and in my madness then contrived a place for him in my domain, rescued his lost fleet, saved his shipmates' lives. Oh, I am swept away, burning by furies. Now the prophet Apollo, now his oracles, now the god's interpreter, if you please, sent down by Jove himself, brings through the air his formidable commands. What fit employment for heaven's high powers? What anxieties to plague serene immortals? I shall not detain you or dispute your story. Go! Go after Italy on the sailing winds. Look for your kingdom. Cross the deep sea swell. If divine justice counts for anything, I hope and pray that on some grinding reef, midway at sea, you'll drink your punishment and call on Dido's name. From far away I shall come after you with my black fires, and when cold death has parted body from soul, I shall be everywhere, a shade to haunt you. You will pay for this, unconscionable. I shall hear, the news will reach me, even among the lowest of the dead. So yeah, she's pissed. And again, that last part there is a little bit of foreshadowing. From far away I shall come after you with my black fires. So this is interpreted as this is a prophecy of the future wars between Carthage and Troy. So I'm gonna come back for you. Carthage is gonna come for Rome. At this, abruptly she broke off and ran in sickness from his sight and the light of day, leaving him at a loss, alarmed and mute with all he meant to say. The maids in waiting caught her as she swooned and carried her to bed in her marble chamber. Duty bound, Aeneas, though he struggled with desire to calm and comfort her in all her pain, to speak to her and turn her mind from grief, and though he sighed his heart out, shaken still with love of her, yet took the course heaven gave him and went back to the fleet. So even now, Aeneas is sad. He wants to comfort her. He loves her. But he is duty bound. And he is following the course heaven gave him. Because when it comes down to it, can you ignore the will of the gods? Generally, no. Generally, no. Then with a will, the Teucrians fell to work and launched the ships along the whole shore. Slick with tar each hull took to the water. Eager to get away, the sailors brought oar bows out of the woods with leaves still on and blah, 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 blah. So they go, they're cutting down trees to make oars as fast as they can. So they're, yeah. So now you would see them issuing from the town to the water's edge in streams, as when, aware of winter, ants will pillage a mound of spelt to store it in their granary. Over fields the black battalion moves, and through the grass on a narrow trail they carry off the spoil. Some put their shoulders to the enormous weight of a trundled grain, while some pull stragglers in and castigate delay. Their to and fro of labor makes the whole track come alive. Okay, Emily, nice to see you. And we'll continue talking on Discord about fun activities soon to come. Now, I wanted to point that out and read that last little section there because we see that the Trojans, they're so busy, they're working so hard, they're like ants. Now, why is that? Why is that noteworthy? Because to Romans, oh my goodness, ants are the best. Ants, they all work together. Look at them, they all help each other. They move things, they build things. They're industrious. Ants, man, ants are great. Ants, bees, these are creatures that Romans they like them. They're big fans of them. Yeah, Aeneid. In Greek mythology, you can disobey the will of the gods, but yeah, it's not going to end up well for you. So again, Romans hearing this or reading this would be like, oh, they're working like ants? That's awesome. They're so great. So they run out, they're doing that stuff. At that sight, what were your emotions, Dido? Sighing, how deeply, looking out and down from your high tower on the seething shore, where all the harbor filled before your eyes with bustle and shouts. Unconscionable love, to what extremes will you not drive our hearts? She now felt driven to weep again, again to move him, if she could, by supplication, humbling her pride before her love, to leave nothing untried, not to die needlessly. So we have mentioned that she will die. So she calls to her sister, Anna, you see the arc of waterfront all in commotion? They come crowding in from everywhere. Spread canvas, call for wind. The happy crews have garlanded the sterns. If I could brace myself for this great sorrow, sister, I can endure it too. One favor, even so, you may perform for me, since that deserter chose you for his friend, and trusted you, even with private thoughts, since you alone know how, or know when he may be reached. Go, intercede with our proud enemy. Remind him that I took no oath at Aulis with Danaans to destroy the Trojan race. I sent no ships to Pergamum. Never did I profane his father Anchises' dust and shade. Why will he not allow my prayers to fall on his unpitying ears? Where is he racing? Let him bestow one last gift on his mistress. This, to await fair winds and easier flight. Now I no longer plead the bond he broke of our old marriage, nor do I ask that he should live without his dear love, Latium, or yield his kingdom. Time is all I beg. Mere time, a respite and a breathing space for madness to subside in, while my fortune teaches me how to take defeat and grieve. Pity your sister. This is the end, this favor, to be repaid with interest when I die. So she says, okay, this is my last gasp here. Sister, go to Aeneas. Remind him, we're not Greeks. We didn't mess up any of his shit before. Ask him to come back. At least just wait until there's better weather. I'm not going to try to keep you in this marriage. We were married, but I'm not going to try to keep you in the marriage. You can still go. Just wait. Just give me a little bit of time to come to grips with this. She pleaded in such terms and in such tears. Her sorrowing sister brought him time and again. But no tears moved him. No one's voice would he attend to tractably. The fates opposed it. God's will blocked the man's once kindly ears. And just as when the north winds from the Alps this way and that contend among themselves to tear away an oak tree hale with age, the wind and tree cry, and the buffeted trunk showers high foliage to earth, but holds on bedrock, for the roots go down as far into the underworld as cresting bows go up in heaven's air. Just so this captain, buffeted by a gale of pleas this way and that way, dinned all the day long, felt their moving power in his great heart, and yet his will stood fast. Tears fell in vain. So he hears her, but he cannot listen. The gods have decided, the gods have blocked his ears. He cannot listen. He wants to listen to her. He cannot listen. He cannot feel what she's trying to inspire in him. And that little note there, that just like a tree being buffeted by winds, yeah, some leaves will fall off, but the tree is still going to stand firm. It mentions the Alps, the winds coming down from the Alps to buffet this tree and harass it and knock a bunch of leaves off of it, but the tree still stands. Because the tree is Rome! It's Rome, people! What are the winds from the Alps? That's Carthage. Because again, the craziest thing that's going to happen in the Carthaginian War is Hannibal is going to lead his troops all the way up and around to come down into Italy from the Alps, cross the Alps to come and attack Italy. And they're going to shake the tree. They're going to knock down some leaves, but it's not going to work. That tree, Rome, is going to stay strong. Yes, elephants. Those freaking elephants. Uh, well, we can talk a little bit more about the history of all that, but man, do I. That's one of like the craziest things about the ancient world, and I love to think about it. Is yes, Hannibal, this actual Carthaginian general, he takes an army, and he's like, if they can beat us at sea, Rome has this great navy. Our ships always get tied up. We fight. Blah blah blah. It's impossible to sail a gigantic army across to Italy without them seeing us and stopping us. We're gonna march all the way around. He does it. And they get into Italy, and Roman soldiers take the field. And I mean, it's like in modern day, if you went into a conflict zone and the enemy came out and they had freaking dragons. Like, that's what it was like for these soldiers. They had never seen an elephant before. They might have heard stories. They were mythological. Like, these are some creatures that exist in other places around the world. They had never seen an elephant. It's like, what is that? Now, thankfully for the Romans, not all that many elephants actually survived the trip. But still, like, what that must have been like for those people. Yeah, exactly. I can't even. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's like dragons. Might as well be dragons. Okay, so yes, tears fell in vain. On Dido in her desolation now, terror grew at her fate. She prayed for death, being heartsick at the mere sight of heaven. That she more surely would perform the act and leave the daylight. Now she saw before her a thing one shudders to recall, on altars fuming with incense where she placed her gifts. The holy water blackened, the spilt wine turned into blood and mire. So she's seen visions of rot and corruption and death. Of this she spoke to no one, not even her sister. Then, too, within the palace was a marble shrine devoted to her one-time lord, a place she held in wondrous honor, all festooned with snowy fleeces and green festive boughs. From this now she thought voices could be heard, and words could be made out, her husband's words, calling her, when midnight hushed the earth. And lonely on the rooftops the night owl seemed to lament in melancholy notes, prolonged to a doleful cry. And then, besides, the riddling words of seers in ancient days, foreboding sayings, made her thrill with fear. In nightmare, fevered, she was hunted down by pitiless Aeneas, and she seemed deserted always, unaccompanied always, on a long journey, looking for her Tyrians in desolate landscapes. As Pentheus gone mad sees the oncoming Eumenides, and sees a double sun, and double Thebes appears. Or as when, hounded on the stage, Orestes runs from a mother armed with burning brands, with serpents hellish black, and in the doorway squat the avenging ones. She's going crazy, is what all that means. She's seen visions of death. She's hearing voices. She has an altar built to honor her late husband. And she hears it talking to her. She has, of course, endless nightmares. So broken in mind by suffering, Dido caught her fatal madness and resolved to die. She pondered time and means, then visiting her mournful sister, covered up her plan with a calm look, a clear and hopeful brow. I should say, content warning, suicide. If you haven't caught the foreshadowing. So she goes to her sister and she pretends everything's okay. Sister, be glad for me. I found a way to bring him back, or free me of desire. Near to the ocean boundary, near sundown, the Aethiops' farthest territory lies, where giant Atlas turns the sphere of heaven, studded with burning stars. From there a priestess of Mycelian stock has come. She is pointed out to me, custodian of that shrine named for daughters of the West, Hesperides, and it is she who fed the dragon, guarding well the holy boughs with honey dripping slow and drowsy poppy. Chanting her spells, she undertakes to free what heart she wills, but to inflict on others duress of sad desires, to arrest the flow of rivers, make the stars move backwards, call up the spirit of the night. So now she's talking about a witch, essentially. You'll see earth shift and rumble underfoot, and ash trees walk down mountainsides. Dearest, I swear before the gods and by your own sweet self, it is against my will that I resort for weaponry to magic powers. In secret, build up a pyre in the inner court under the open sky, and place upon it the arms that build a pyre, and place upon it the arms that faithless man left in my chamber, all his clothing, and the marriage bed on which I came to grief. Solace for me to annihilate all vestige of the man, vile as he is. My priestess shows me this. So she's saying, look, I'm over it. I called a witch, got some advice. Exactly, we're gonna throw out all this crap. We're gonna just burn all of this junk. So set a big pyre, put all of this stuff on there. I want it out of my sight. While she was speaking, cheek and brow grew pale. But Anna could not think her sister cloaked a suicide in these unheard of rites. She failed to see how great her madness was, and feared no consequence more grave than at Zacchaeus' death. So as commanded, she made the preparations. For her part, the queen, seeing the pyre in her innermost court, erected huge with pitch pine and sawn ilex, hung all the place under the sky with wreaths, and crowned it with funereal cypress boughs. On the pyre's top she put a sword he left with clothing, and an effigy on a couch, her mind fixed now ahead on what would come. Around the pyre stood altars, and the priestess, hair unbound, called in a voice of thunder upon 300 gods, on Erebus, on Chaos, and on triple Hecate, three-faced Diana. Then she sprinkled drops, purportedly from the fountain of Avernus. Rare herbs were brought out, reaped at the new moon by scythes of bronze, and juicy with a milk of dusky venom. Then the rare love charm, or caul torn from the brow of a birthing foal, and snatched away before the mother found it. So, witchcraft, essentially, right? It's basically, it's almost like they're going to perform a spell. There are all these things that they need to have. They're praying to these gods. They've got certain trees that were cut, bows that were cut down to make the pyre, drops from a secret river, rare herbs, afterbirth from an animal being born, like all of this stuff that they need, these components. Dido herself, with consecrated grain in her pure hands, as she wept near the altars, freed one foot from sandal straps, let fall her dress ungirdled, and, now sworn to death, called on the gods and stars that knew her fate. She prayed then to whatever power may care in comprehending justice for the grief of lovers bound unequally by love. Now again, we start also to get in their sacrificial terms. Dido herself will be a sacrifice. The night had come, and weary in every land, men's bodies took the boon of peaceful sleep. The woods and the wild seas had quieted at that hour when the stars are in mid-course, and every field is still. Cattle and birds with vivid wings that haunt the limpid lakes, or nest in thickets in the country places, all were asleep under the silent night. Not though the agonized Phoenician queen. She never slakened into sleep, and never allowed the tranquil night to rest upon her eyelids or within her heart. Her pain redoubled. Love came on again, devouring her, and on her bed she tossed in a great surge of anger. So awake, She pressed these questions, musing to herself. Look now, what can I do? Turn once again to the old suitors, only to be laughed at, begging a marriage with Numidians whom I disdained so often? Then what? Trail the Ilian ships and follow like a slave commands of Trojans? Seeing them so agreeable, in view of past assistance and grief, so thoughtful their unshaken gratitude? Suppose I wished it, who permits or takes aboard their proud ships one they so dislike? Poor lost soul, do you not yet grasp or feel the treachery of the line of Laomedon? What then? Am I to go alone, companion of the exultant sailors in their flight? Or shall I set out in their wake, with Tyrians, with all my crew at my side, and send the men I barely tore away from Tyre to sea again, making them hoist their sails to more sea winds? No. Die as you deserve. Give pain quietus with a steel blade. Sister, you are the one who gave way to my tears in the beginning, burdened a mad queen with sufferings, and thrust me on my enemy. It was not given to me to lead my life without new passion, innocently, the way wild creatures live, and not to touch these depths. The vow I took to the ashes of Sichaeus was not kept. So she broke out afresh in bitter mourning. On his high stern deck Aeneas, now quite certain of departure, everything ready, took the boon of sleep. In dream, the figure of the god returned with looks reproachful as before. He seemed again to warn him, being like Mercury in every way, in voice, in golden hair, and in the bloom of youth. Son of the goddess, sleep away this crisis, can you still? Do you not see the dangers growing round you? Madman, from now on? Can you not hear the offshore west wind blow? The woman hatches plots and drastic actions in her heart, resolved on death now, whipping herself on to heights of anger. Will you not be gone in flight while flight is still within your power? Soon you will see the offing boil with ships and glare with torches. Soon again the waterfront will be alive with fires, if dawn comes while you linger in this country. Ha! Come, break the spell. Woman's a thing forever fitful and forever changing. At this he merged into the darkness. Then, as the abrupt phantom filled him with fear, Aeneas broke from sleep and roused his crewmen. Up! Turn out now! Oarsmen, take your thwarts. Shake out sail. Look here. For the second time, a god from heaven's high air is goading me to hasten our break away, to cut the cables. Holy One, whatever god you are, we go with you. We act on your command most happily. Be near, graciously help us, make the stars in heaven propitious ones. He pulled his sword a flash out of its sheath and struck at the stern hawser. All the men were gripped by his excitement to be gone, and hauled and hustled. Ships cast off their moorings, and an array of hulls hid inshore water as oarsmen churned up foam and swept to sea. A god has come to him in a dream. He wakes up. We have to go now. From her tower, the queen caught sight of ships on the seaward reach, with sails full and the wind astern. She knew the waterfront now empty, bare of oarsmen. Beating her lovely breast 3 times, 4 times, and tearing her golden hair, "O Jupiter," she said, "will this man go? Will he have mocked my kingdom, stranger that he was and is? Will they not snatch up arms and follow him from every quarter of the town? And dock hands tear our ships from moorings? On! Be quick with torches. Give out arms. Unship the oars." What am I saying? Where am I? What madness takes me out of myself? Dido, poor soul, your evil doing has come home to you. Then was the right time, when you offered him a royal scepter. See the good faith and honor of one they say bears with him everywhere the hearth gods of his country, one who bore his father spent with age upon his shoulders. Could I not then have torn him limb from limb and flung the pieces on the sea? His company, even Ascanius, could I not have minced and served up to his father at a feast? Could I not have just killed them all at that moment? I could have even killed his son and fed it to him. The luck of battle might have been in doubt, so let it have been. Whom had I to fear, being sure to die? I could have carried torches into his camp, filled passageways with flame, annihilated father and son and followers, and given my own life on top of all. O sun, scanning with flame all works of earth, and thou, O Juno, witness and go-between of my long miseries, and Hecate, screeched for at night at crossroads in the cities, and thou, avenging Furies, and all gods of whom Alyssa may call, take notice. Overshadow this hell with your high power, as I deserve, and hear my prayer. Mentioned a couple times. Dido also has a second name, Alyssa. Lots of characters have multiple names. If by necessity that impious wretch must find his haven and come safe to land, if so Jove's destinies require, and this his end in view must stand, yet all the same, when hard beset in war by a brave people, forced to go outside his boundaries and torn from Iulus, let him beg assistance, let him see the unmerited deaths of those around and with him, and accepting peace on unjust terms, let him not, even so, enjoy his kingdom, or the life he longs for, but fall in battle before his time and lie unburied on the sand. This I implore. This is my last cry as my last blood flows. So she's praying to the gods. If he has to get away, if he has to go and achieve his destiny of founding the city, at least let him die without seeing it come to full fruition. Then, O my Tyrians, besiege with hate his progeny and all his race to come. Make this your offering to my dust. No love, no pact must be between our peoples. No, but rise up from my bones, avenging spirit. Harry with fire and sword the Dardan countrymen, now or hereafter, at whatever time the strength will be afforded. Coast with coast in conflict, I implore, and sea with sea, and arms with arms. May they contend in war, themselves and all the children of their children. Let there be forever war between Rome and Carthage. Go fight them wherever you can. Let there be wars. Now she took thought of one way or another at the first chance to end her hated life, and briefly spoke to Barcae, who had been Sichaeus' nurse, her own an urn of ash long held in ancient fatherland. Dear nurse, tell Sister Anna to come here, and have her quickly bedew herself with running water before she brings our victims for atonement. Let her come that way, and you too put on pure wool about your brows. I have a mind to carry out that rite to Stygian Jove that I have readied here, and put an end to my distress, committing to the flames the pyre of that miserable Dardan. At this, with an old woman's eagerness, Barcae hurried away. Much better. And Dido's heart beat wildly at the enormous thing afoot. She rolled her bloodshot eyes. Her quivering cheeks were flecked with red as her sick pallor grew before her coming death. Into the court she burst her way. Then, at her passion's height, she climbed the pyre and bared the Dardan sword, a gift desired once for no such need. Her eyes now on the Trojan clothing there, and the familiar bed, she paused a little, weeping a little, mindful, then lay down and spoke her last words. remnants dear to me, while God and fate allowed it. Take this breath and give me respite from these agonies. I lived my life out to the very end and passed the stages fortune had appointed. Now my tall shade goes to the underworld. I built a famous town, saw my great walls, avenged my husband, made my hostile brother pay for his crime. Happy, alas, too happy. If only the Dardanian keels had never beached on our coast. And here she kissed the bed. I die unavenged, she said, but let me die. This way, a blessed relief to go into the undergloom. Let the cold Trojan far at sea drink in this conflagration and take with him the omen of my death. Amid these words, her household people saw her, crumpled over the steel blade, and the blade aflush with red blood drenched her hands. A scream pierced the high chambers. Now through the shocked city rumor went rioting, as wails and sobs with women's outcry echoed in the palace, and heaven's high air gave back the beating din, as through all Carthage or old Tyre fell to storming enemies, and out of hand flames billowed on the roofs of men and gods. Her sister heard, and trembling, faint with terror, lacerating her face, beating her breasts, ran through the crowd to call the dying queen. It came to this, then, sister? You deceived me? The pyre meant this? Altars and fire meant this? What shall I mourn first? Being abandoned? Did you scorn your sister's company in death? You should have called me out to the same fate. The same blade's edge and hurt at the same hour should have taken us off. With my own hands had I to build this pyre, and had I to call upon our country's gods, that in the end, with you placed on it there, O heartless one, I should be absent? You have put to death yourself and me, the people and the fathers bred in Sidon, in your own new city. Give me fresh water, let me bathe her wound, and catch upon my lips any last breath hovering over hers. Now she had climbed the topmost steps, and took her dying sister into her arms to cherish, with a sob, using her dress to stanch the dark flow of blood. But Dido, trying to lift her heavy eyes, fainted again. Her chest wound whistled air. 3 times she struggled up on one elbow, and each time fell back on the bed. Her gaze went wavering as she looked for heaven's light, and groaned at finding it. Almighty Juno, filled with pity for this long ordeal and difficult passage, now sent Iris down out of Olympus to set free the wrestling spirit from the body's hold. For since she died, not at her fated span, nor as she merited, but before her time, inflamed and driven mad, Proserpina had not yet plucked from her the golden hair, delivering her to Orcus of the Styx. So humid Iris through the bright heaven flew on saffron yellow wings, and in her train 1,000 hues shimmered before the sun. At Dido's head she came to rest. This token, sacred to Dis, I bear away as bidden, and free you from your body. Saying this, she cut a lock of hair. Along with it, her body's warmth fell into dissolution, and into the winds her life withdrew. And that is the end of Book 4, The Passion of the Queen. She is dead. And woe betide Aeneas, woe betide Troy. Yeah. Heavy stuff. Heavy stuff. And again, Dido's fault? No. Aeneas' fault? A little, but not entirely. The gods' fault? Gods had a lot to do with it. And in the end there, again, Juno is watching this, and very specifically, Juno is crying over the fact that this is her fault too. She caused this, and so she sends Iris again, another sort of messenger god, to go and take the pain away. Let her spirit go free. Let her finally die. And she does. Whew. Now again, lots of different ways you can interpret this, and to some people, Aeneas is purely the bad guy here, and you can look at it that way. Always the god's fault. I mean, not gonna lie, that's pretty much the way it is. But yes. So ending book 4 there will be the end of our reading today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Got a little heavy there at the end, so again, hopefully that content warning didn't come too late for anybody who didn't want to hear such things. But there's heavy stuff in this story and in other ones. Big week, normal week ahead of us. Lots of stuff going on. I'll be back tomorrow for Toy Tuesday. Excuse me. Getting a little stretch there. If you are not somehow, I can't imagine, but if somehow you're here and you're not on the Discord, get on that Discord. We're discussing upcoming stuff. What is that emote? Oh, is that the? It's a cat? I'm trying to wrap it around, but I'm trying to figure out what that emote is. It looks like a cat. I see a cat there. It looks cute. Oh, it says tie behind him? I don't know. I'm confused. But it's fine. Get on the Discord, the Homebuddies Discord. Like I said, lots of interesting stuff happening over there. And yeah. Let's jump on out of here. What do we want to do? What do we want to check out here? Oh, TY as in thank you. Yes. Thank you, Undead Saints fan, for clearing that up for me. Okay, no raiding. Not gonna do it. Not gonna raid. Just gonna end this. So go, have fun, have a good Monday. Hopefully the start of your week is going well, and I think that's it. We'll pick up with book 5 next time. And yeah, okay, bye.